Imagine this. A devoted pregnant wife living the perfect life in a luxurious mansion accidentally catches her millionaire husband in a passionate kiss with his mistress right on camera. What starts as a soul-crushing betrayal spirals into an epic tale of deception where the affair uncovers not just lies in a double life, but a massive web of fraud threats and shocking twists that could destroy everything. From viral videos that explode online to courtroom battles, FBI arrests, and an unlikely alliance that changes lives forever. Will she get her revenge, or will the danger consume her? You won't believe how this story unfolds. Stick around till the end for the mind-blowing finale. If this hooked you, smash that like button. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, drop a comment below sharing your wildest revenge story. Share this video with a friend who needs some drama in their life and hit subscribe with notifications on so you never miss out on these gripping tales. Let's dive in. Sarah Chen Morrison stood in front of her bedroom mirror, smoothing her hands over her 7-month pregnant belly. At 38, this pregnancy felt different from when she carried Emma 10 years ago. Back then, she was a rising marketing executive with boundless energy. Now, as a devoted homemaker in Westchester County, she battled daily insecurities about her changing body and her place in their affluent social circle. "Mommy, you look beautiful," 10-year-old Emma said from the doorway, her backpack slung over her shoulder. Sarah smiled, pushing away her doubts. "Thank you, sweetheart. Are you ready for school?" "Dad already left for his meeting," Emma announced, checking her phone like the preteen she was becoming. "He said he might be late tonight because of some important client thing." This heartbreaking family drama was about to unfold in ways Sarah could never imagine. She kissed Emma goodbye and headed to her Range Rover, excited about today's appointment. Dr. Reynolds had promised 3D ultrasound images of baby James and Sarah, planned to surprise David with the photos over a romantic dinner. The October morning was crisp, painting the Hudson Valley in brilliant reds and golds. Sarah felt optimistic as she drove through their upscale neighborhood past perfectly manicured lawns in million-dollar homes. This was the life she and David had built together. Successful, stable, enviable. At Dr. Reynolds' office, Sarah arrived 15 minutes early, as was her habit. The waiting room buzzed with other expectant mothers, their partners holding their hands, sharing excited whispers. Sarah felt a pang of loneliness that David couldn't make it, but his tech company demanded so much of his time, especially lately. While checking in, Sarah noticed something that made her heart skip. Through the large windows facing the street, she spotted David's distinctive black Tesla parked across at the Westchester Grand Hotel. Her pulse quickened with excitement. Maybe he was planning a surprise celebration for their ultrasound appointment. "Mrs. Morrison, we're running about 10 minutes behind," the receptionist announced. "That's perfect," Sarah said, pulling out her phone. She decided to record a quick video message for David, something sweet about their perfect life and growing family. "Hi, my love," she whispered to her phone camera, angling it to capture her glowing face and rounded belly. "I'm at Dr. Reynolds about to see our little James. I can't wait to show you these pictures tonight. I saw your car at the hotel across the street. Are you planning something special? I love you so much, David. We have such a perfect life together." As she spoke, movement caught her eye through the window. Her words trailed off as she watched a figure emerge from the hotel's elegant entrance. It was David, unmistakably him, in his charcoal gray suit and confident stride. But he wasn't alone. A stunning blonde woman walked beside him, her hand possessively on his arm. She was young, probably late 20s, with the kind of effortless beauty that made Sarah suddenly conscious of her pregnancy weight and swollen ankles. The woman wore a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Sarah's hand trembled as she continued recording, unable to look away. This pregnant wife betrayed scenario unfolding before her eyes felt surreal, like watching someone else's life implode. David stopped beside his Tesla and turned to face the woman. In broad daylight in front of God and everyone, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. Not a polite peck or professional goodbye, but a passionate, lingering kiss that spoke of intimacy and familiarity. The phone nearly slipped from Sarah's shaking hands. Her breath came in short gasps as she watched her husband of 12 years embrace another woman with the same tenderness he once showed her. The timestamp on her phone read 10:47 a.m., October 15th, 2024, a moment that would forever divide her life into before and after. "Mrs. Morrison," The nurse's voice seemed to come from underwater. "We're ready for you now." Sarah mechanically followed the nurse, her mind reeling. Throughout the ultrasound, she smiled and nodded at appropriate moments, but internally she was drowning. The images of little James moving on the monitor should have filled her with joy, but all she could see was David's hands on that woman's face. "Baby looks perfect," Dr. Reynolds announced cheerfully. "Strong heartbeat, good size for gestational age. How are you feeling, Sarah? You seem a bit pale." "Just tired," Sarah managed. "It's been a long week." She left the medical office with ultrasound photos clutched in her hand, evidence of the life growing inside her while her marriage died a little more with each step. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Sorry I couldn't make the appointment, darling. Emergency client meeting ran long. Can't wait to hear about our little man. Love you." The casual lie hit her like a physical blow. Emergency client meeting. Sarah looked back at the hotel where she'd witnessed her husband affair with mistress, then at his loving text message. The cognitive dissonance made her feel nauseous. Driving home through their picture-perfect neighborhood, Sarah tried to rationalize what she'd seen. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe the woman was a client, and what looked like intimacy was just friendly European-style greeting. Maybe her pregnancy hormones were making her paranoid. But deep down, Sarah knew. The way David had touched that woman, looked at her, kissed her. Those were not the actions of a man conducting business. This was her midlife betrayal story beginning to unfold, and she was the unsuspecting victim. At home, Sarah sat in David's BMW. He'd taken the Tesla to his supposed meeting. She needed to move it from the driveway, but noticed something that made her blood run cold. On the passenger seat lay a small white shopping bag from La Perla, the luxury lingerie boutique in Manhattan. With trembling fingers, Sarah opened the bag. Inside was exquisite black lace lingerie size 4. The receipt was dated yesterday, October 14th, the same day David claimed to be visiting his dying aunt in Connecticut. Sarah stared at the receipt, her vision blurring with tears. Size 4. She hadn't been a size 4 since college. Even before pregnancy, she wore size 8, and now at 7 months pregnant, she was size 12 on a good day. The evidence was undeniable. Her husband was buying intimate gifts for another woman while lying about his whereabouts to his pregnant wife. Sarah sat in the car surrounded by the trappings of their successful life, the mansion behind her, the luxury vehicle, the manicured gardens, and felt utterly alone. This heartbreaking family drama was just beginning, and she was the star of a show she never auditioned for. Her phone buzzed again. Another loving message from David. "Thinking of you and baby James, can't wait to come home to my beautiful wife tonight. You're everything to me." The contrast between his public deception and private declarations of love made Sarah's stomach lurch. She rushed inside and barely made it to the bathroom before vomiting, unsure if it was morning sickness or the nauseating reality of her husband's betrayal. As she sat on the cool bathroom tiles, one hand protectively cradling her belly, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She wasn't going to confront David immediately. Instead, she was going to find out exactly how deep this betrayal went. She was going to catch her millionaire husband in the act, and when she did, the whole world would know the truth about David Morrison. Sarah had always been methodical, a trait that served her well during her marketing career, and now would serve her in uncovering the truth. She spent Emma's school hours transforming into a digital detective, using skills she'd developed in market research to investigate her own husband. The first breakthrough came from David's laptop, which he'd carelessly left open on his home office desk. Sarah knew his passwords. They'd always shared everything, or so she thought. His email revealed a trail of restaurant reservations, flower deliveries, and hotel bookings that painted a clear picture of a double life. 8 months, Sarah whispered to herself, scrolling through credit card statements on a secondary account she'd never known existed. The affair had been going on for 8 months, practically the entire duration of her pregnancy. Her best friend Maya Rodriguez arrived as planned for their weekly coffee date, finding Sarah surrounded by printed emails and bank statements spread across the kitchen island like evidence in a courtroom. "Holy hell, Sarah," Maya said, setting down her oversized purse and surveying the papers. As a divorce attorney, she recognized the scene immediately. "Please tell me this isn't what I think it is." "My husband's affair with mistress started 8 months ago," Sarah said matter-of-factly, though her voice cracked on the words. "Look at this." Dinner at Le Bernardin weekend at the Hamptons Jewelry from Cartier, all while I was home with morning sickness, believing his lies about working late. Maya picked up one of the credit card statements, her attorney mind already calculating. Sarah, this is thousands of dollars per month. How did you not notice? He said business was booming, that he was reinvesting profits. I trusted him completely. Sarah laughed bitterly. I even praised him for being so dedicated to providing for our family. Who is she? Maya asked, settling into investigation mode. Vanessa Blake, 28 years old, calls herself a business consultant. Look at her LinkedIn. Sarah showed Maya her phone. Harvard MBA, specializes in tech startups. She's beautiful, successful, everything I used to be before I became just David's wife. Maya studied Vanessa's professional headshot, confident, smile designer blazer, the kind of polished perfection that screamed ambition and success. Sarah, you need to hear this as your friend and as an attorney. You're not just anything. You're a woman who sacrificed her career to support her family, and that has value. Tell that to my husband, Sarah muttered, then looked up with sudden alarm. Maya, what if he leaves me? I haven't worked in 8 years. I have no independent income and with 2 children. Stop, Maya said firmly. First we gather evidence, then we plan strategy. Connecticut is an equitable distribution state, which means marital assets get divided fairly. Plus, with his infidelity and the children, you'll be in a strong position. That afternoon, while Emma was at soccer practice, Sarah continued her investigation. She discovered David's pattern: expensive dinners, every Tuesday and Thursday hotel stays during his supposed business trips and shopping sprees that coincided with Vanessa's social media posts showing off new jewelry and designer clothes. The most painful discovery came from Vanessa's Instagram account. Photo after photo showed glimpses of a lavish lifestyle: champagne glasses at sunset, designer handbags, spa weekends. But it was the subtle details that cut deepest: a man's watch on a restaurant table that Sarah recognized as David's Rolex, a reflection in a wine glass showing a familiar silhouette, vacation photos from places David claimed to visit alone for work. Sarah screenshotted everything, building a digital dossier of her husband's betrayal. Each image felt like a knife twist, but she forced herself to continue. This pregnant wife betrayed wasn't going down without a fight. When David came home that evening with flowers and apologies for missing the ultrasound appointment, Sarah almost broke down and confronted him. Instead, she accepted his kiss and smiled as he talked about his stressful day dealing with difficult clients. How was your day, beautiful? He asked, one hand resting on her belly. How's our little James doing? Perfect, Sarah lied smoothly. Dr. Reynolds said, everything looks great. Here are the ultrasound photos. David's face lit up with what appeared to be genuine joy as he examined the images. He's going to be handsome like his dad, he joked, then pulled Sarah close. You're amazing, you know that I'm so lucky to have you. The words should have been comforting, but knowing what she knew, they felt like mockery. How could he hold her and lie so effortlessly? How could he kiss her with the same lips that had kissed Vanessa just hours earlier? David, Sarah said carefully, your sister Kate called today. She mentioned that Aunt Margaret is doing much better. I thought you said she was dying. A flicker of something, panic, irritation, crossed David's face before he recovered. Oh, you know Kate. She's always been overly optimistic about medical situations. Margaret had a good day, but she's still very sick. Another lie delivered without hesitation. Sarah mentally added it to her growing list of evidence. That night, as David slept beside her, Sarah lay awake planning her next moves. She needed more concrete proof, something undeniable that would expose this midlife betrayal story for what it was. Tomorrow, she would take her investigation to the next level. But first, she allowed herself a moment of grief for the marriage she thought she had, the trust that was now shattered, and the future she'd planned that would never come to pass. Silent tears fell onto her pregnancy pillow as baby James kicked inside her, oblivious to the chaos surrounding his pending arrival. At 3 a.m., Sarah's phone buzzed with a notification. It was a tagged photo on Instagram from Vanessa's account, a romantic dinner for 2 at a restaurant Sarah recognized from their anniversary last year. The caption read, "When someone makes you feel like the only woman in the world." The timestamp showed the photo was taken tonight during the 2 hours David claimed to be stuck in traffic coming home from his meeting. Sarah screenshot the image, adding it to her evidence file. Tomorrow, this heartbreaking family drama would take a new turn. Tomorrow, she would begin planning her revenge. Sarah's investigation led her to Vanessa Blake's yoga studio in Greenwich, an upscale wellness center called Harmony Flow. According to Vanessa's social media, she had a standing Tuesday morning class at 10 a.m. Sarah parked across the street at 9:45, her heart pounding with nervous energy. She'd spent the morning carefully applying makeup to hide the sleepless nights and pregnancy exhaustion. If she was going to confront the other woman, she wanted to look strong, not like the defeated wife she felt inside. Vanessa emerged from a silver Porsche Cayenne, a car that Sarah now realized David had probably helped finance. Even in yoga clothes, she looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. Sarah took a deep breath, grabbed her purse, and crossed the street. "Vanessa Blake!" Sarah called out as the younger woman headed toward the studio entrance. Vanessa turned, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows rising in surprise. "Yes, do I know you?" "I'm Sarah Morrison, David's wife." The color drained from Vanessa's face, but she recovered quickly. "I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about." 8 months, Sarah said calmly, despite her racing heart. "You've been sleeping with my husband for 8 months, while I've been pregnant with his child." Vanessa glanced around nervously, clearly aware that other yoga class attendees were starting to arrive and could overhear. "Look, Mrs. Morrison, I think there's been some misunderstanding. La Perla lingerie size 4 purchased October 14th. Sarah interrupted. "Dinner at Le Bernardin last Thursday, weekend at the Hamptons, while I thought he was visiting his dying aunt. Should I continue?" Vanessa's composure cracked. "Can we please not do this here? Why? Because you don't want your yoga buddies to know you're a home wrecker?" Sarah's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "It's not what you think," Vanessa said desperately. "David told me you two were separated. He said you were getting divorced after the baby was born." "That's interesting, since he told me he loved me just last night." Sarah pulled out her phone, showing Vanessa a photo from their family vacation 3 months ago. David's arms around both Sarah and Emma, all of them smiling. "Does this look like a separated couple to you?" Vanessa stared at the image, her perfect composure finally shattering. "He said, he promised me." Her voice trailed off as the reality of David's manipulation became clear. "What else did he promise you?" Sarah pressed. Vanessa looked around again, noticing the small crowd that had gathered to watch their confrontation. Several people had their phones out, and Sarah realized this private moment was becoming very public. "I need to tell you something," Vanessa whispered, moving closer to Sarah. "Something David doesn't know yet." "What?" "I'm pregnant too." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her vision blurred and she felt her knees buckle. The stress, the shock, the accumulated exhaustion of the past few days all crashed over her at once. Sarah, are you okay?" Vanessa reached out, but Sarah jerked away. "Don't touch me," Sarah gasped, clutching her belly as sharp pains shot through her abdomen. "Don't you dare touch me." This was her second peak moment of utter despair. Standing in a yoga studio parking lot confronting her husband's pregnant mistress, while her own pregnancy complications sent warning signals through her body, it was beyond anything she could have imagined in her worst nightmares. The pain intensified and Sarah doubled over. Someone called 911 as the autumn rain began to fall, turning the confrontation even more dramatic. Sarah found herself on her knees in the wet parking lot, mascara running down her cheeks, while strangers recorded her breakdown on their phones. "I can't lose this baby," she whispered to herself, one hand protectively over her bump. "I can't lose him too." The ambulance arrived within minutes, and paramedics quickly assessed Sarah's condition. Stress-induced contractions at 7 months along, dangerous but treatable if she remained calm. "Ma'am, we need to get you to the hospital," the paramedic said gently. "Is there someone we can call?" "My husband," Sarah said automatically, then laughed bitterly. "Actually, he's probably busy with his business consultant." Vanessa approached the ambulance hesitantly. "Mrs. Morrison, I had no idea about any of this. David lied to both of us." "How pregnant?" Sarah asked weakly. 4 months. Sarah closed her eyes, doing the math. Vanessa got pregnant right around the time Sarah announced her own pregnancy. David hadn't just been cheating, he'd been living a complete double life. At Greenwich Hospital, Sarah was admitted for observation. The contractions had stopped, but her blood pressure remained dangerously elevated. She called Maya instead of David, unable to face his false concern and manufactured crisis management. I'll be right there, Maya said when Sarah explained what happened. And Sarah, don't talk to David until I get there. This changes everything legally. But David appeared before Maya arrived, rushing into Sarah's hospital room with flowers and concern etched on his face. Sweetheart, what happened? I got a call from the hospital. Where's Vanessa? Sarah asked quietly. David's face went pale. What? Your pregnant mistress. I met her today. Lovely girl. Very flexible, I'm sure. Sarah, I can explain. Can you explain how you've been supporting two pregnant women while lying to both of us? Can you explain how you promised her we were getting divorced while telling me you love me? David moved toward her bed, but Sarah held up her hand. Don't. Just don't. The baby. The baby is fine, no thanks to the stress you've caused. But David, I know everything. The credit cards, the hotels, the lies about your aunt. Everything. David's expression shifted from panic to something colder, more calculating. Sarah, you're clearly having some kind of breakdown. Pregnancy hormones can cause paranoia. Don't you dare gaslight me, Sarah said, her voice stronger than she felt. I have evidence. Photos, receipts, credit card statements. I have proof of every lie you've told. The hospital room door opened, and Maya walked in, followed by a man in a suit. David, this is my associate, Michael Chen. We represent Sarah's interests now. What the hell is this? David demanded. This is me protecting myself and my children, Sarah said. You're served, David. I'm filing for divorce. As the legal papers were handed to David, Sarah felt a strange mix of relief and terror. This heartbreaking family drama was far from over, but at least now the truth was beginning to emerge. Her husband's affair with Mistress was no longer a secret she carried alone. But as David left the hospital room, his parting words chills her. You have no idea what you've started, Sarah. No idea at all. Sarah woke up the next morning to her phone buzzing incessantly. Still groggy from the hospital stay and medication, she fumbled for the device, expecting to see messages from worried friends and family. Instead, her screen showed hundreds of notifications from social media platforms she barely used. Her heart sank as she opened the first video. The footage was shaky but clear enough. Sarah confronting Vanessa in the yoga studio parking lot, her voice rising with each accusation. The dramatic moment when she collapsed, rain mixing with her tears, as paramedics loaded her into an ambulance. Someone had edited it with dramatic music and text overlays, reading, Pregnant wife confronts husband's mistress, and millionaire's wife's epic breakdown. Oh my God, Sarah whispered, scrolling through video after video. The hashtag #PregnantWifeRevenge was trending with thousands of comments ranging from supportive to cruel. Karma is a pregnant woman scorned. Read one popular comment with 3,000 likes. This is what happens when you marry for money instead of love, said another. That poor woman and her baby. Hope she takes him for everything. But the cruel comments cut deeper. Attention-seeking drama queen. Maybe if she took care of herself, her husband wouldn't stray. Stage for social media clout. Maya burst into Sarah's hospital room carrying coffee and a grim expression. Have you seen? I'm watching my breakdown go viral in real time, Sarah said, showing Maya her phone. This pregnant wife betrayed story just became entertainment for strangers. Actually, this could work in our favor, Maya said, settling into the visitor's chair. Public opinion is largely on your side. You're getting sympathy, support, and most importantly, credibility. When this goes to court, David can't claim you're making up stories for attention. There are witnesses and video evidence. Dr. Reynolds entered, interrupting their conversation. Good morning, Sarah. How are you feeling? Physically better, emotionally. Like I'm starring in a nightmare I can't wake up from. Your blood pressure is down and baby James looks good on the monitors. I want to keep you one more day for observation, but you should be able to go home tomorrow. After the doctor left, Maya pulled out her tablet. Sarah, I need to show you something else. David's response to the viral video. Sarah's stomach dropped. He made a statement. His company's PR team issued a press release this morning. Maya read from the screen. David Morrison, CEO of Morrison Tech Solutions, is deeply concerned about his wife's recent public outburst and is seeking professional help for her during this difficult time. He asked for privacy as the family navigates this challenging period. He's making me look crazy, Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. Which is exactly what we expected, Maya replied. It's textbook manipulation, make the victim look unstable while positioning himself as the concerned husband. But Sarah, we have documentation of his affair, financial records, and now public footage of you confronting his mistress. His strategy won't work. Sarah's phone rang. The caller ID showed her sister-in-law's name. Kate, thank God, I need someone in his family to understand. Sarah, what the hell is going on? Kate Morrison's voice was sharp. David called me crying, saying you've had some kind of breakdown and are making wild accusations. There are videos of you screaming at some woman online. Sarah felt the familiar knife twist of betrayal. Kate, David is having an affair. She's pregnant. I have proof. Sarah, honey, you're 7 months pregnant and under enormous stress. Are you sure you're not misinterpreting things? I saw them together. I have receipts, credit card statements, photos. David loves you, Kate interrupted. He's always talking about how perfect you are, how lucky he is. This doesn't make sense. Sarah realized that David's manipulation extended beyond her. He'd been carefully managing his image with everyone in their social circle, painting himself as the devoted husband and her as the unstable wife. Kate, I need you to listen to me. I think you need professional help, Sarah, and I think those social media videos are going to hurt Emma. Have you thought about how this affects her? The call ended, leaving Sarah feeling more isolated than ever. Even David's own sister believed his version of events. Maya must have seen the despair on Sarah's face. Don't let them isolate you. That's part of the playbook. Make you think you're crazy, that no one believes you, that you have nowhere to go. But what if they're right? What if I am having some kind of breakdown? Sarah, look at me. Maya's voice was firm. You found evidence of an 8-month affair. You confronted the other woman and discovered she's also pregnant with your husband's child. Your reaction was completely normal. Any woman would have broken down under those circumstances. That afternoon, Emma visited the hospital and Sarah's heart broke, seeing her daughter's confused, frightened expression. Mom, there are kids at school showing videos of you on their phones, Emma said quietly. They're saying mean things about our family. Sarah pulled Emma close, careful of her IV lines and monitor wires. Sweetheart, sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt the people they love. Your dad made some very big mistakes and I found out about them. That's why I was upset. Are you and Dad getting divorced? The simple question from her 10-year-old daughter hit harder than any cruel internet comment. I don't know yet, baby, but whatever happens, Dad and I both love you very much, and that will never change. After Emma left, Sarah made a decision. She was tired of being reactive, tired of being portrayed as the unstable wife. If this midlife betrayal story was going to be public, she was going to control the narrative. She called Maya. I want to do an interview. Local news, something credible. I want to tell my side of the story before David's PR team destroys my reputation completely. Are you sure once you go public, there's no taking it back? I'm already public, Sarah said, gesturing to her phone still buzzing with notifications. I might as well make sure people know the truth. That evening, as Sarah prepared for her televised interview the next day, she received an unexpected visitor. Vanessa Blake stood in her hospital room doorway, looking nothing like the confident woman from the yoga studio. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she looked as exhausted as Sarah felt. I came to apologize, Vanessa said hesitantly, and to tell you that I broke up with David. Sit, Sarah said, surprised by her own calm tone. I called him after what happened yesterday, Vanessa continued. I told him I knew he lied about being separated. I told him about the baby. How did he react? He denied everything at first, then got angry, then tried to convince me you were having a mental breakdown and making everything up. Vanessa's voice broke. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I really believed him when he said you two were over. What did you tell him about the baby? That it's his and that he needs to decide what kind of man he wants to be. Vanessa wiped her eyes. He hung up on me. Haven't heard from him since. Sarah studied the young woman who had unknowingly helped destroy her marriage. How far along did you say you were? 16 weeks. Have you thought about what you're going to do? I don't know. I can't afford to raise a child alone, not really. My business is just getting started, and without David's support, Vanessa trailed off. Vanessa, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. David is not going to support you or that baby. He's going to distance himself as far as possible to minimize the damage to his reputation and finances. But he said he loved me. He told me the same thing the night before I caught him with you. Men like David don't love anyone except themselves. As Vanessa left, promising to stay in touch, Sarah felt an unexpected emotion, pity, not just for Vanessa, but for herself, for Emma, for baby James, and for Vanessa's unborn child. They were all victims of David's selfishness and manipulation. Tomorrow she would begin fighting back. Tomorrow her revenge went viral overnight would become a story of empowerment instead of humiliation. But tonight she grieved for the family she thought she had and prepared for the battle ahead. Dr. Elena Vasquez's office felt like a sanctuary with its warm lighting, comfortable furniture, and the gentle sound of a desktop fountain. Sarah had been hesitant about therapy, worried it would confirm David's narrative about her mental instability, but Maya insisted it was crucial for both her well-being and her legal case. "Tell me about your marriage before the affair," Dr. Vasquez said during their first session, her voice kind but professional. Sarah shifted on the couch, one hand unconsciously resting on her belly. "I thought it was perfect. We met when I was 26 working at a marketing firm in Manhattan. David was this successful entrepreneur, charming, ambitious. He swept me off my feet." "When did you stop working?" "After Emma was born. David said it didn't make financial sense to pay for childcare when his business was taking off. He wanted me home with our daughter." Sarah paused. "I resisted at first. I loved my career." "What changed your mind?" "David could be very persuasive. He'd point out how much money we'd save, how much better it would be for Emma, how he needed my support to build his company. He made it sound like I was being selfish for wanting to work." Dr. Vasquez made notes. "Looking back, how do you feel about that decision?" "Lost," Sarah admitted. "I used to be this confident professional who closed million-dollar deals. Now I'm just David's wife, Emma's mom. I don't even know who Sarah is anymore." This revelation sparked weeks of intensive therapy sessions. Sarah began to see patterns she'd missed during her marriage. How David gradually isolated her from her friends, discouraged her professional ambitions, and made her financially dependent on him. "He used to joke that I was lucky he supported my shopping habit," Sarah told Dr. Vasquez during their third session. "But I realize now that he controlled every aspect of our finances. I never saw the big picture." "That's called financial abuse," Dr. Vasquez explained. "It's a form of control disguised as protection." The therapy sessions became Sarah's anchor as her life spiraled into chaos. The viral video had led to more media attention than she ever wanted. Her local news interview had been picked up nationally, making her a reluctant poster child for midlife betrayal stories. "I feel like I'm living in a fishbowl," Sarah confided during week 4 of therapy. "Strangers recognize me at the grocery store. Emma's classmates' parents whisper when they see me. I just want my privacy back." "Tell me about your support system," Dr. Vasquez asked. "Maya is incredible. She's handling everything legally and emotionally supporting me. But David's family, they think I'm having a breakdown. Our couple friends have mostly sided with him. It's like I was only valuable as half of David and Sarah, never just as Sarah." The isolation was crushing, but what hurt most was Emma's struggle. Sarah's 10-year-old daughter was caught between her parents' war, confused by the sudden media attention and her classmates' questions. "Mom, kids at school are asking if Dad really has a girlfriend," Emma said one evening while Sarah helped with homework. "What do you tell them?" "I don't know what to say. Is it true?" Sarah set down Emma's math worksheet, choosing her words carefully. "Your dad made some choices that hurt our family. That's why we're living separately right now. But the videos online, people are saying mean things about you." This was Sarah's third peak moment of utter despair. During her next therapy session, she broke down, completely sobbing, as she described feeling like she was failing both her children, the daughter she was raising, and the son she was carrying. "I can't protect Emma from this circus, and I'm terrified about what kind of world I'm bringing James into," Sarah cried. "What if I really am having a breakdown? What if David's right and I'm just a paranoid, unstable woman who destroyed her own family?" Dr. Vasquez leaned forward, her expression serious. "Sarah, you discovered your husband's affair through careful investigation, not paranoid delusions. You confronted his mistress when you found out she was pregnant with his child. Your reactions have been proportional to the betrayals you've experienced. Then why do I feel so crazy? Because that's what emotional abuse does. It makes victims question their own reality, their own perceptions, their own worth. Through therapy, Sarah began to understand the depth of David's manipulation. He hadn't just cheated, he'd systematically undermined her confidence, isolated her from independence, and created a situation where she felt helpless without him. I want to show you something, Dr. Vasquez said during their sixth session, pulling out a book. It's called Why Does He Do That by Lundy Bancroft. It's about abusive men and the patterns they follow. Sarah read passages that felt like they were describing her marriage, the way David made decisions unilaterally while claiming to protect her, how he dismissed her concerns as emotional overreactions, the way he rewarded her compliance with affection and punished her independence with coldness. I never thought of myself as an abuse victim, Sarah said quietly. He never hit me. Abuse takes many forms: financial control, emotional manipulation, isolation. These are all forms of abuse. The therapy sessions also helped Sarah process her complex feelings about Vanessa. The younger woman had been calling regularly, sharing updates about her pregnancy and David's continued absence from her life. I should hate her, Sarah told Dr. Vasquez. She slept with my husband. She's pregnant with his child. But mostly I feel sorry for her. And why do you think that is? Because she's another one of his victims. David lied to her just like he lied to me. She thought she was in love with a single man who was planning to leave his wife. Instead, she got involved with a manipulative married man who abandoned her the moment things got complicated. As Sarah's due date approached, her therapy sessions focused on preparing for single motherhood and rebuilding her identity. She'd started a support group for women facing midlife betrayal, using her unwanted fame to help other women in similar situations. You've taken something devastating and turned it into a platform for helping others, Dr. Vasquez observed. That takes remarkable strength. I don't feel strong, Sarah admitted. I feel terrified most of the time. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling afraid and moving forward anyway. But as Sarah left therapy that day, she received a call that would test every ounce of courage she'd built. David's lawyer was requesting an emergency custody hearing, claiming Sarah's increasingly erratic behavior and public displays of instability made her unfit to care for Emma. The heartbreaking family drama was about to take another devastating turn, and Sarah realized her therapy sessions had been preparing her for a battle she wasn't sure she could win. At 34 weeks pregnant, Sarah was in Dr. Vasquez's office when the first contraction hit. She'd been discussing her fears about the upcoming custody hearing when a sharp pain doubled her over. Sarah, Dr. Vasquez immediately stood up. What's happening? Oh God, I think I'm in labor. Sarah gripped the arm of the couch as another contraction followed quickly. It's too early. James isn't ready. Dr. Vasquez called 911 while Sarah tried to breathe through the panic. 6 weeks early was dangerous territory: lung development, feeding issues, potential lifelong complications. All the stress of this past months was culminating in her worst fear, losing the baby. Maya, Sarah gasped into her phone as the paramedics arrived. Hospital, it's happening. I'm on my way, Maya said immediately. Don't call David yet. Let me handle that. But as Sarah was being wheeled into Greenwich Hospital, she spotted David's Tesla in the parking lot. Her heart hammered as she was rushed into labor and delivery, praying he was there for a legitimate reason and not another rendezvous with Vanessa. The medical team worked quickly to assess the situation. Sarah's blood pressure was dangerously high, and the contractions were consistent and strong. Dr. Reynolds arrived within minutes, her usual calm demeanor replaced with focused urgency. Sarah, we need to deliver this baby today, she announced after examining the monitors. Your blood pressure is approaching stroke levels, and baby James is showing signs of distress. Is he going to be okay? Sarah asked, tears streaming down her face. 34 weeks is premature, but manageable. Our NICU team is excellent. We're going to take good care of both of you. As Sarah was prepped for an emergency C-section, David burst into the room, but he wasn't alone. Vanessa Blake stood beside him, her own pregnancy now visibly showing at 5 months along. What is she doing here? Sarah demanded, her voice hoarse. Sarah, please calm down. How I am, David said, approaching her bedside. Vanessa and I have something important to tell you. Are you insane? Maya appeared in the doorway, having arrived just in time to witness this surreal scene. Get her out of here immediately or I'm calling security. We have news, David continued, ignoring Maya. Vanessa and I are engaged. We're going to raise our children together, and we think it would be best if Emma came to live with us. You're clearly not stable enough. Sarah's blood pressure monitor began beeping frantically. The emotional shock of David's announcement, delivered while she was in premature labor, sent her vitals into dangerous territory. Everyone out except Mrs. Rodriguez, Dr. Reynolds ordered firmly. We're going to surgery now. As Sarah was wheeled to the operating room, she heard David calling after her. Sarah, be reasonable. Think about what is best for the children. The audacity was staggering. He was announcing his engagement to his pregnant mistress while Sarah was delivering their premature son and somehow positioning it as concern for the children's welfare. Baby James Morrison was born at 4:47 p.m., weighing 4 pounds 2 ounces. He was immediately transferred to the NICU, breathing with assistance and fighting for every moment of his tiny life. Sarah woke from surgery to find Maya beside her bed, laptop open, already working on legal strategies. How is he? Sarah asked groggily. Holding his own. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. He's a fighter like his mom. David. Gone, thank God. But Sarah, we need to talk about what happened. His announcement about the engagement bringing Vanessa here. That was calculated psychological warfare designed to destabilize you during a medical crisis. Sarah tried to sit up, wincing from the incision pain. Where's Emma? With my mom. She doesn't know about the baby yet. I wanted you to decide how to handle that conversation. Over the next several days, Sarah lived between her hospital room and the NICU, watching her son fight for life, while David played absent father. Hospital records showed he'd been in the building twice but never visited James. Instead, security footage revealed him meeting with his lawyer in the parking lot. He's building a case, Maya explained during one of her daily visits. Every moment he doesn't visit James, every day you spend here emotionally distraught, every public moment of your breakdown, it's all being documented to prove you're unfit. But he's the one who caused this, Sarah said, exhaustion making her voice weak. His affair, his lies, his cruelty. That's why James came early. We know that, but David's narrative is that you had a psychotic break and need professional help. He's painting himself as the stable parent, protecting the children from their unstable mother. The support from unexpected sources kept Sarah going. Vanessa Blake appeared at the hospital on day 3 alone and looking conflicted. I came to see how the baby is doing, she said hesitantly from the doorway of Sarah's room. He's fighting, Sarah replied, too exhausted for anger. Sarah, I need you to know that I didn't know David was planning to propose. He just showed up at my apartment with a ring saying you'd had a breakdown and that we needed to present a united front for the custody hearing. Sarah studied the younger woman's face. Are you going to marry him? I don't know. I'm starting to see who he really is, and it's not the man I fell in love with. Vanessa sat down carefully. He hasn't been to see James once, has he? Not once, but he's been texting me constantly about how we need to appear stable and committed for the judge. It's like he cares more about winning than about his actual children. This heartbreaking family drama had reached a level of cruelty Sarah couldn't have imagined. David was using both women's pregnancies as weapons in his battle to maintain control and avoid accountability. Vanessa, Sarah said carefully, what do you think is best for your baby? Vanessa's hand moved to her belly protectively. I want my child to have a father who actually wants to be a father, not someone who sees children as possessions to be managed. When Vanessa left, Sarah felt a strange shift. For the first time since discovering the affair, she felt like she might not be fighting this battle alone. But that night, as she sat beside James's incubator, watching her tiny son breathe with machine assistance, Sarah received a text message that chilled her to the bone. It was from David. This is what happens when you try to destroy me, Sarah. Our son wouldn't be fighting for his life if you'd been reasonable. His condition is on your hands. Even at his son's most vulnerable moment, David found a way to blame Sarah for the consequences of his own actions. This pregnant wife betrayed was about to discover just how far her husband would go to avoid taking responsibility for the wreckage he'd created. Sarah's tech-savvy neighbor, Marcus Chen, had been quietly observing the drama unfolding next door. As a cybersecurity consultant, He'd developed a professional interest in David's suspicious behavior and a personal sympathy for Sarah's situation. I know this might sound crazy, Marcus said, visiting Sarah at the hospital with a laptop bag slung over his shoulder, but I think David might be involved in more than just adultery. Sarah looked up from James's NICU bedside where she'd been spending 12-hour days watching her son slowly improve. What do you mean? My firm does security audits for small tech companies. David's business model never made sense to me. Too much cash flow for the client base he claimed to have. And then I noticed some interesting patterns in his spending. Marcus opened his laptop, showing Sarah spreadsheets he'd compiled. Your husband has been moving large amounts of money through shell companies, offshore accounts, and cryptocurrency exchanges. This isn't affair money. This is embezzlement. Sarah stared at the financial data, her marketing background, helping her understand the implications. He's been stealing from his clients. That's what it looks like. And Sarah, if I can trace this from public records and basic investigation, the FBI can definitely build a case. Maya arrived as Marcus was explaining the money trail, and her lawyer instincts kicked in immediately. Marcus, this is incredibly helpful, but we need official forensic accounting to make it legally useful. Can you put us in touch with a white-collar crime specialist? Already on it, Marcus said. My cousin works for the SEC. Unofficially, they have been watching Morrison Tech Solutions for months. Your situation might be the key to exposing a much larger fraud scheme. As the investigation unfolded over the following weeks, Sarah discovered the true scope of David's deception. He hadn't just been lying to his wife. He'd been lying to everyone. Client funds had been diverted to support his lavish lifestyle, including the apartment he had rented for Vanessa, the expensive gifts, the luxury trips, and even some of the money he had used to try to discredit Sarah in their divorce proceedings. Look at this, Maya said, showing Sarah bank records from David's secret accounts. He spent $40,000 on a private investigator to follow you and document your erratic behavior for the custody case. Money stolen from his client's pension fund. The evidence was overwhelming. David had created an elaborate pyramid scheme using new client investments to pay older clients while skimming massive amounts for personal use. The affair with Vanessa hadn't just been about midlife crisis. It had been about flaunting wealth that wasn't his to begin with. But the most shocking discovery came when Sarah accessed David's laptop files through legal discovery. Hidden in encrypted folders were communications that revealed the true timeline of his planning. Maya, look at this, Sarah said, showing her friend a series of emails between David and his lawyer. He's been planning to leave me for over a year. The timing of my pregnancies, Vanessa's pregnancy, it's all been calculated. The emails revealed David's strategy: get Sarah pregnant to keep her dependent, manipulate Vanessa into pregnancy to create leverage, then use both women's emotional vulnerability to position himself as the victim of their unstable behavior. One email from David to his lawyer was particularly damning. Sarah is predictably emotional about the pregnancy. If I time the revelation correctly, her reaction will support our incompetence case. Vanessa is more complicated but manageable. The key is making sure neither woman can claim abandonment. He orchestrated this entire nightmare, Sarah breathed. He planned for me to find out about the affair because he knew I'd react emotionally and he could use that reaction against me. Maya was already on her phone with the FBI contact Marcus had provided. We're not just talking about divorce court anymore, Sarah. This is federal crime territory. But as the investigation intensified, Sarah realized David was becoming increasingly dangerous. He'd lost control of his carefully planned narrative, and his responses were becoming more erratic and vindictive. Vanessa called Sarah in tears one evening. He's been threatening me, she sobbed into the phone. He says if I testify against him or cooperate with your lawyer, he'll make sure I lose my baby and my business. Where are you? Sarah asked, immediately concerned. Hiding at my sister's place in Boston. Sarah, I'm scared. He's not the man I thought I knew. Sarah made a decision that surprised even herself. Come stay with me. We're both pregnant, both being threatened by the same man. Maybe it's time we stopped being divided and started protecting ourselves and our children. The idea of David's wife and mistress living together was unconventional, but their situation had moved far beyond normal circumstances. They were both victims of a man who had manipulated them systematically, and their unborn children deserved protection. When FBI agents arrested David at his office 3 days later for embezzlement, wire fraud, and money laundering, the media frenzy reached new heights. The viral video of Sarah's confrontation with Vanessa now took on new context. She hadn't been having a breakdown, she'd been uncovering a federal crime. Morrison Tech CEO arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Read the headline in the Wall Street Journal. Pregnant wife's viral video led to investigation. Sarah's revenge went viral overnight had become something much more significant. She'd accidentally exposed a financial criminal and saved multiple families from losing their retirement savings. But as Sarah read the news coverage from James's NICU bedside, she received a call that made her blood run cold. Mrs. Morrison, this is Agent Rodriguez with the FBI. We have reason to believe your husband may attempt to contact you from jail. He's facing significant prison time, and men in his position sometimes make desperate choices. We want to discuss protective measures for you and your family. The heartbreaking family drama was transforming into something more dangerous. David Morrison wasn't just a cheating husband anymore. He was a cornered criminal with nothing left to lose. The transformation in public perception happened almost overnight. Sarah went from being portrayed as an unstable wife, having a breakdown, to being hailed as a whistleblower who exposed a major financial fraud. The narrative shift was dramatic and swift. "You're trending again," Maya announced, showing Sarah her phone as they sat in the NICU, watching James steadily improve. But this time it's hashtag whistleblower wife and hashtag pregnant wife hero. The media requests were overwhelming. Good Morning America wanted an exclusive interview. The Today Show offered a primetime special. Netflix had already reached out about documentary rights. Sarah's accidental journey from victim to viral sensation to criminal case catalyst had captivated the nation. "I don't want to be a celebrity," Sarah told Maya. "I just want my son to get better and my family to heal." But Sarah, you have an opportunity here. You can control the narrative for once, instead of being at the mercy of David's manipulation. Dr. Elena Vasquez agreed. During their weekly therapy session, she encouraged Sarah to consider the broader impact of her story. "You've gone from feeling powerless to accidentally wielding considerable influence," Dr. Vasquez observed. "How do you want to use that platform?" Sarah thought about all the women who'd contacted her through social media, wives who suspected affairs, women facing financial manipulation, mothers struggling with the guilt of broken families. Her story had resonated because it represented fears that many women carried silently. "I want to help other women avoid what I went through," Sarah decided. "If my humiliation can prevent someone else's, maybe it's worth it." Sarah agreed to a carefully planned media strategy. Working with Maya and a crisis communications specialist, she appeared on 60 Minutes for an in-depth interview that would tell her complete story. The interview, conducted in her home with Emma's artwork visible in the background and photos of baby James on the coffee table, humanized Sarah in a way the viral videos couldn't. She spoke about the slow erosion of her independence, the financial manipulation she hadn't recognized, and the courage it took to confront uncomfortable truths. "I'm not a hero," Sarah told correspondent Anderson Cooper. "I'm just a woman who refused to accept lies as love. Any woman in my situation would have done the same thing." "But you could have handled this privately. Why go public?" "Because David's manipulation didn't happen in private. He involved my daughter's school community, our social circle, even strangers on the internet. When someone makes your private pain public, you have the right to tell your side of the story." The interview aired to massive ratings and overwhelmingly positive response. Sarah's calm, articulate explanation of her experience contrasted sharply with the hysterical woman from the yoga studio videos. Viewers saw a mother protecting her family, not an unstable wife having a breakdown. More importantly, the FBI revealed that Sarah's cooperation had helped them recover over $15 million in stolen client funds. Families facing bankruptcy because of David's fraud would now have their retirement savings restored. Mrs. Morrison's evidence was crucial to our investigation, FBI agent Rodriguez told reporters. Her documentation of unusual spending patterns led us to trace the money trail that exposed the full scope of the embezzlement scheme. Sarah received thousands of messages from grateful clients whose money David had stolen. One elderly couple sent a handwritten letter. "You saved our retirement. We'll never be able to thank you enough." But the most unexpected vindication came from Vanessa Blake. The younger woman had moved into Sarah's guest room, temporarily creating an unusual but functional household of two pregnant women united against their common manipulator. I want to do the right thing, Vanessa announced one morning over breakfast. I want to testify against David. Sarah looked at Vanessa, noting how pregnancy had changed her. The polished, confident business consultant had been replaced by a vulnerable young woman facing single motherhood and financial uncertainty. Are you sure his lawyers will try to destroy your credibility? Let them try. I have recordings of him threatening me emails where he admits to lying about your marriage text messages, planning how to manipulate the custody hearing. David was so arrogant, he documented his own crimes. Vanessa's cooperation provided the final pieces of evidence needed for the federal case. Her recordings revealed David's consciousness of guilt and his deliberate manipulation of both women. As Sarah's due date for her custody hearing approached, the landscape had completely changed. David was in federal custody, facing 25 years in prison. Public opinion had shifted dramatically in Sarah's favor. And most importantly, James was thriving in the NICU, growing stronger every day. The custody hearing is almost a formality now, Maya explained. With David facing federal charges and jail time, his parental rights claims are essentially void. You'll get full custody of both children, plus substantial financial compensation from the asset recovery. Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope, not just for survival, but for the possibility of building a better life for her children. I want to start a nonprofit, Sarah told Maya one evening as they watched James sleep peacefully in his hospital crib. For women facing financial manipulation in relationships, most women don't even realize it's happening to them. What would you call it? Second chances. Because that's what we all deserve. A second chance to build the life we actually want, not the life someone else planned for us. But as Sarah prepared to transition from victim to advocate, she received a call that reminded her that David Morrison wasn't finished causing damage. Sarah, it's Agent Rodriguez. We intercepted communications from David in federal holding. He's been making calls to associates on the outside. We have reason to believe he may be planning something to discredit you before his sentencing hearing. Even from jail, David was still manipulating, still scheming, still trying to control the narrative. This midlife betrayal story was far from over, and Sarah realized her final confrontation with her husband was yet to come. Living with Vanessa Blake had been awkward at first, but as both women navigated their complicated pregnancies and the legal aftermath of David's arrest, an unexpected friendship emerged. They were like survivors of the same disaster, finding strength in their shared experience. I can't believe I thought designer purses and expensive dinners meant he loved me, Vanessa said one morning, folding baby clothes Sarah had given her from Emma's infancy. At 7 months pregnant, she was struggling financially since David's assets had been frozen by federal authorities. I can't believe I thought controlling my finances meant he was protecting me, Sarah replied, feeling her own baby kick as she organized legal documents. We were both manipulated by an expert. Emma had adjusted to Vanessa's presence with the resilience of children. Initially suspicious, she'd gradually warmed to the young woman who was carrying her half-sibling. Is Vanessa's baby going to be my brother or sister? Emma asked one evening during dinner. Half-brother, Sarah explained carefully. You'll share the same father but have different mothers. That's weird but okay, Emma said with 10-year-old pragmatism. At least I'll have 2 little brothers to boss around. The comment made both women laugh, and Sarah realized that Emma was handling this unconventional situation better than most adults would. James continued to thrive in the NICU, now breathing on his own and gaining weight steadily. Sarah spent her days between the hospital legal meetings and preparing for the nonprofit she planned to launch. Vanessa had volunteered to help with the business plan, using her MBA skills to create something meaningful from their shared trauma. We could start with a hotline, Vanessa suggested, working on her laptop while Sarah reviewed contracts. Women need someone to talk to when they first suspect financial manipulation. And legal referrals, Sarah added. Most women don't know their rights or how to document evidence. Their planning was interrupted by a call from Maya with disturbing news. David's been making calls from jail to someone named Vincent Torres. Ring any bells? Sarah felt her blood chill. Vincent is David's business partner from his early startup days. They had a falling out years ago, but Vincent always seemed unstable. Well, he's been visiting David in jail and making some concerning inquiries about your daily routine, Emma's school schedule, and the hospital where James is staying. Vanessa looked up from her laptop, fear evident in her eyes. You think David would really try to hurt us? Men facing decades in prison sometimes make desperate choices, Maya said grimly. The FBI is taking this seriously. They want to discuss protection options. That afternoon, Agent Rodriguez met with both women at Sarah's home. The veteran FBI agent had a no-nonsense demeanor that was both reassuring and frightening. David Morrison is facing 25 to 30 years in federal prison, he explained. His sentencing hearing is in 6 weeks. Men in his position sometimes try to eliminate witnesses or create enough chaos to derail prosecution. What kind of protection are we talking about? Sarah asked, thinking of Emma's need for normalcy and James's medical requirements. Increased patrol presence, security system upgrades, and protocols for hospital visits. We're also monitoring David's communications more closely. The threat cast a shadow over their daily lives, but it also strengthened the bond between Sarah and Vanessa. They were no longer just two women dealing with the same manipulative man. They were allies protecting their children from potential danger. 2 weeks later, the danger became real. Sarah was leaving the hospital after an evening visit with James when she noticed a man following her to the parking garage. Her FBI training kicked in, and she immediately called the emergency number Agent Rodriguez had given her. Black sedan license plate starts with NYH, male driver, mid-40s, following me for 3 blocks. She reported while walking quickly toward her car. Police arrived within minutes, apprehending Vincent Torres before he could approach Sarah. In his car, they found detailed photographs of Sarah's daily routine, maps of Emma's school route, and a notebook with what appeared to be surveillance notes. He wasn't planning to hurt you physically, Agent Rodriguez explained later. Torres was gathering information to discredit you. Photos of you looking tired or stressed, evidence of your living situation with Vanessa, anything David's lawyers could use to revive the unstable mother narrative. Even from jail, he's still trying to control me, Sarah said, exhaustion evident in her voice. Not anymore, Agent Rodriguez replied firmly. Torres has been charged with stalking and conspiracy. David's phone privileges have been revoked. And Sarah, this incident actually helps your case. It demonstrates the lengths David will go to manipulate situations, even criminal lengths. The attempted surveillance had an unexpected consequence. Vanessa, who was now 8 months pregnant, went into early labor from the stress. Unlike Sarah's traumatic emergency delivery, this was a controlled situation with time for preparation. Sarah found herself in the unusual position of being Vanessa's labor coach, holding her hand through contractions, while calling her sister Maya to watch Emma. I'm scared, Vanessa whispered between contractions. What if something goes wrong? What if David somehow gets custody of my baby? That's not going to happen, Sarah said firmly. You're going to be a great mother, and your daughter is going to be loved and protected. Baby Sophia Blake was born healthy at 37 weeks, a tiny but perfect daughter who looked remarkably like her half-brother James. As Sarah held the newborn while Vanessa recovered, she felt an overwhelming sense of protective love, not just for her own children, but for this innocent baby who shared their DNA and their complicated family story. She's beautiful, Sarah told Vanessa, carefully placing Sophia in her mother's arms. Thank you, Vanessa said, tears streaming down her face. Not just for being here today, but for everything. You could have hated me, could have made this so much harder. We're both his victims, Sarah replied, but more importantly, we're both survivors. The sisterhood that had emerged between them was unlike anything either woman had expected. They'd created a functional family unit born from crisis, proving that sometimes the most unlikely alliances become the strongest bonds. But as they celebrated Sophia's safe arrival, neither woman realized that David Morrison had one final manipulation plan, a scheme that would test their newfound strength and change their lives forever. 6 months after David's arrest, Sarah's life had stabilized into something resembling normalcy. James was home from the NICU, healthy and growing. Emma had adjusted to her unusual family situation with remarkable resilience. Vanessa had moved into her own apartment nearby, but remained close friends with Sarah, their children playing together regularly. The nonprofit Second Chances had launched to national attention, with Sarah using her unwanted fame to help women recognize and escape financial manipulation. She'd appeared on numerous talk shows, written articles for women's magazines, and spoken at conferences about economic abuse in relationships. You've created something beautiful from something terrible, Dr. Vasquez observed during one of their monthly check-ins. How does it feel to have transformed your trauma into purpose? Empowering, Sarah admitted. I wake up every morning knowing I'm helping women who are where I was a year ago, trapped and didn't even realize it. David's sentencing hearing had resulted in 28 years in federal prison. The judge had been particularly harsh, noting David's callous manipulation of vulnerable women and complete disregard for his children's welfare. Sarah hadn't attended the hearing, choosing instead to focus on her new life rather than revisiting the old trauma. Emma was thriving in therapy and had even started a friendship with Vanessa's daughter, Sophia, despite the 8-month age difference. "They're going to grow up like sisters," Emma had announced with satisfaction. "Weird sisters, but sisters." On a crisp autumn morning, almost exactly 1 year after her viral confrontation with Vanessa, Sarah was preparing for a national television interview about domestic financial abuse when a package arrived at her door. The package had no return address, just her name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a USB drive and a single piece of paper with a message: "You don't know the whole truth about David. This changes everything. A friend." Sarah stared at the note, her hands trembling slightly. She thought she knew everything about David's crimes, but the ominous tone of the message suggested otherwise. Maya arrived for their pre-interview prep session to find Sarah staring at the USB drive. "Should I open it?" Sarah asked. "Not without the FBI present," Maya said immediately. "After everything with Vincent Torres, we can't be too careful." Agent Rodriguez arrived within an hour, bringing a computer specialist to examine the drive safely. What they discovered was beyond anything Sarah had imagined. The USB contained a meticulously organized digital archive spanning over 15 years. David Morrison hadn't just defrauded his recent clients. He'd been running variations of the same scheme across multiple states with multiple identities for over a decade. "My God." Agent Rodriguez breathed, scrolling through file after file. "Sarah, your husband is a serial predator. Look at this." The files revealed a pattern that made Sarah's stomach turn. David would target successful women in different cities, often those going through life transitions, divorce, career changes, death of parents. He'd romance them, gain their trust, manipulate their finances, and then disappear when they became suspicious or financially depleted. Jennifer Walsh in Denver, 2015, Agent Rodriguez read from the files. Divorced mother of two, inherited $400,000 from her father's estate. David convinced her to invest in his startup, then vanished with the money. Amanda Foster in Austin, 2018, recent widow life insurance settlement of $750,000. Same pattern. Romance, false business opportunity, financial devastation. Lisa Chen in Seattle, 2020, career woman facing midlife crisis, substantial savings account. David promised marriage, convinced her to fund his tech company expansion, disappeared when she started asking questions. Sarah felt nauseous as the full scope became clear. How many women? At least 12 that we can document from these files. Probably more. Agent Rodriguez looked grim. "Sarah, you weren't his first victim, and you weren't going to be his last. You were just the one who fought back." The most chilling discovery was a document titled Exit Strategy, SM, dated just 2 weeks before Sarah discovered the affair. David's plan was detailed and cold: continue the pregnancy to keep Sarah emotionally vulnerable, establish Vanessa as the more stable partner, trigger Sarah's emotional breakdown through strategic revelation of the affair, use her reaction to gain custody of Emma and unborn James, then disappear with Vanessa and both children while leaving Sarah to deal with the fraud investigation. "He wasn't just cheating on me," Sarah realized with horror. "He was planning to take my children and disappear forever." "Gets worse," the computer specialist said, pulling up another file. "Look at this communication with someone named Marcus Rivera in Mexico. They were arranging new identities for David, Vanessa, and 2 children. Maya was already on her phone with federal prosecutors. This elevates everything. We're not just talking about financial fraud anymore. This is kidnapping, conspiracy, identity fraud across multiple states, potentially dozens of victims." But the most shocking revelation came in the final folder photos and documents related to other children. David Morrison had fathered at least 6 children with different women across his criminal career, abandoning each family when his schemes were discovered or completed. "Emma has half-siblings she doesn't know about," Sarah whispered, looking at photos of children who shared her daughter's distinctive eyes and smile. Agent Rodriguez closed the laptop. Sarah, whoever sent you this information, has given us enough evidence to reopen multiple cold cases and potentially save other families. Do you have any idea who might have compiled this? Sarah thought about the note, a friend. Someone who knew David well enough to access years of hidden information. Someone who cared enough about justice to risk exposure. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Sarah Morrison. The voice was female, older, unfamiliar. Yes. My name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm calling from Denver. I think you received my package. Sarah's heart stopped. Jennifer Walsh, the first woman on David's victim list from 2015. You sent the USB drive. I've been tracking David Morrison for 9 years, Jennifer said, ever since he destroyed my family and disappeared with my children's college funds. When I saw your story on the news, I knew I had to reach out. How did you get all that information? I hired a private investigator when the police wouldn't help. It took years and cost me everything I had left, but I found the other victims. We've been building a case hoping someday we'd find someone with the platform to expose him. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. There are more women. 18 confirmed victims across 12 states. Sarah, you're the only one who fought back publicly and won. You're the only one who can give the rest of us justice. As Sarah processed this information, she realized her story wasn't ending. It was evolving into something much larger. Her personal, heartbreaking family drama was actually part of a massive criminal enterprise that had destroyed dozens of families. What do you need me to do? Sarah asked. Keep fighting, keep telling the truth. And Sarah, don't trust anyone completely. David has accomplices we haven't identified yet, people who helped him target and research his victims. This isn't over. The call ended, leaving Sarah staring at the USB drive that had changed everything once again. Just when she thought she'd found closure, she discovered that her ordeal was part of something much more sinister. Maya looked at her with concern. Sarah, you don't have to take this on. You've done enough. No, Sarah said firmly, thinking about Emma James Sophia and all the children David had abandoned across the country. This isn't just about me anymore. This is about stopping a predator and giving his victims justice. As Sarah prepared for what would become the most important interview of her life, she realized that her journey from pregnant wife, betrayed to national advocate, was far from over. David Morrison's final manipulation had backfired spectacularly. Instead of silencing her, his attempt to destroy her had created the most dangerous enemy he could have imagined, a victim who refused to stay silent. The heartbreaking family drama that began with a viral video was about to become a federal case that would reshape how domestic financial abuse was prosecuted nationwide. But as Sarah sat down for the television interview that would expose David's multi-state crime spree, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You've started something you can't finish. Some secrets should stay buried. D. David Morrison was in federal prison with no phone privileges, which meant he wasn't alone in his crimes. Someone on the outside was continuing his work, and Sarah had just made herself their primary target. The camera rolled, and Sarah began telling America about the monster who had fooled them all. But somewhere in the shadows, David's network was already planning their response to the woman who had dared to expose the truth. Her revenge went viral overnight, but the real battle was just beginning. The congressional hearing on domestic financial abuse was standing room only. Sarah sat at the witness table, no longer the broken woman from the viral video, but a confident advocate who had helped expose one of the largest domestic fraud rings in U.S. history. Mrs. Morrison, the committee chair began, thanks to your courage in coming forward, how many victims have now been identified in the Morrison case? 34 confirmed victims across 16 states with total losses exceeding $40 million, Sarah testified. But more importantly, we've identified and arrested 7 accomplices who helped David Morrison research, target, and manipulate his victims. In the gallery, Vanessa sat with 2-year-old Sophia on her lap while Maya held baby James. Emma, now 11, was in school but had insisted on watching the live stream with her class as part of a civics project. The Morrison Act, federal legislation requiring banks to report suspicious patterns consistent with domestic financial abuse, was expected to pass with bipartisan support. Sarah's nonprofit Second Chances now operated in 12 states with plans for national expansion. But as Sarah finished her testimony and walked toward the gallery where her chosen family waited, Her phone buzzed with a familiar type of message that made her smile instead of frightening her. Saw you on TV today. So proud of how strong you've become. Your story saved my marriage. A grateful wife in Ohio. These messages arrive daily now. Women who recognize manipulation in their own relationships, who found the courage to seek help, who built stronger families by refusing to accept lies disguised as love. David Morrison would spend the rest of his life in federal prison. His accomplices were facing their own lengthy sentences. Most importantly, his victims were finally getting justice and support. As Sarah walked out of the Capitol building surrounded by her unconventional but loving family, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from that devastating day at the yoga studio to this moment of triumph. She'd lost the perfect life she thought she wanted and discovered the authentic life she actually needed. Her children would grow up knowing that strength came from truth, that families could be built in many ways, and that the bravest thing anyone could do was refuse to accept someone else's version of reality. The pregnant wife who had been betrayed had become the woman who exposed a predator and saved countless other families from the same fate. Her revenge went viral overnight, but her healing would last a lifetime. And somewhere in America, another woman was taking her first brave step toward freedom, inspired by a story that proved even the most devastating betrayal could become the foundation for an extraordinary new beginning. Welcome, everyone, to our channel. We're excited to share with you the gripping story of how a millionaire once cruelly kicked his pregnant wife out, only for her to return decades later in a twist that stunned him beyond belief. If you've heard bits and pieces, trust me, you'll want to hear the whole saga to understand how a single reckless decision can spark a lifetime of regret and, ultimately, a confrontation no one saw coming. Before we delve deeper, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on more incredible stories. We love hearing from you, so don't hesitate to drop your thoughts in the comments section. Do you think our protagonist made the right choices, or did fate push her too far? Let us know where you're listening from too. Now keep watching to discover how this tale reaches an ending that no one will soon forget. Donovan Hawthorne was the kind of man who seemed to have stepped directly out of a business magazine. Tall, sophisticated, and with an air of unshakable confidence. His dark hair was streaked with subtle hints of gray, evidence of years spent amassing wealth in the ruthless world of New York City real estate. On a crisp evening in Manhattan, Donovan relaxed in the living room of his penthouse overlooking the shimmering lights of Central Park. The polished marble floors reflected the glow from the grand chandelier, creating an atmosphere of refined opulence. He nursed a glass of top-shelf whiskey, swirling it idly, allowing the amber liquid to catch the light. In that moment, everything appeared perfect, at least on the surface. He was a self-made millionaire, had the ear of countless influential figures, and was one of the city's most respected real estate moguls. Yet not everything in Donovan's world was as impeccable as it appeared. Sitting across from him near the fireplace, feeling very much like an outsider in her own home, was his wife, Aurora Hawthorne. She nervously rubbed the hem of her midnight blue dress, summoning the courage to speak words she had rehearsed in her head all week. Their marriage had started with such promise, filled with love, adventure, and the excitement of building a future together. But as Donovan's business empire expanded, something shifted in him. He became distant, brimming with an arrogance that left little room for tenderness. Aurora sensed he had begun to see love as an inconvenience, something that might stand in the way of his ambitions. The small tokens of affection he once showered on her vanished, replaced by transactions and tasks. Love no longer seemed like a priority, and Aurora often felt more like an adornment than a partner. On that chilly evening, Aurora could not keep her secret any longer. She stepped forward, her voice trembling, and told Donovan the news. She was pregnant. She had expected at least a glimmer of happiness in his eyes, maybe a moment of warmth that would spark the tender man she once knew. But Donovan remained cold. He set his whiskey glass down deliberately, scarcely hiding a condescending smirk. His reaction was not curiosity or excitement. Instead, he questioned Aurora's motives. In a voice eerily calm, he implied that this pregnancy was some scheme orchestrated to trap him. Accusations flew, hitting Aurora like a series of blows. Shocked, she tried to explain that this was their child, that she loved him genuinely and wanted nothing more than to share life's greatest joys with him. Donovan, however, was unyielding. He mentioned his mother's early warnings, that Aurora was from the wrong crowd, that she wanted his money, and that she did not understand the weight of their social obligations. As Aurora stood there, tears welling in her eyes, Donovan wrote a check and offered it to her with a dismissive flick of his wrist. The gesture stung more than any insult he could have spoken. Though he claimed it was for her well-being, his intention was clear. He wanted her gone, out of his life and out of his carefully curated penthouse. Aurora tore the check in half, her heart pounding, and declared she would leave, but not because she could be bought. Gathering a small bag of her belongings, she left that very night, her body chilled by the biting wind of the city. She felt an emptiness settle inside her, a confusion about how someone who had once claimed to love her could discard her so easily. Yet even as despair threatened to consume her, a fierce protectiveness for the tiny life growing inside her lit a spark of determination she had never known before. Aurora's feet carried her aimlessly through the bustling streets of Manhattan that night. The glow of billboards and the cacophony of horns felt like an assault on her senses, each reminder that she no longer belonged here, in Donovan's world of extravagance and power. At first, she thought she might call an acquaintance or a distant relative, but her pride flared. What would she say? That Donovan Hawthorne, the famed millionaire, had tossed her out without a cent to her name. Her hands were shaky and cold, but she found the resolve to keep going. She wandered into Grand Central Terminal, her heart beating like a drum, seeking temporary refuge on a public bench. Clutching her coat around her, she felt the slight swell of her belly and whispered to her unborn child that she would protect it, no matter how dark the future seemed. As the hours passed, the dazzling lights of New York City began to blur into the darkness. Aurora soon realized that staying in this city would be impossible. She had no resources, no family ties here, and every corner seemed haunted by Donovan's presence. A recollection sparked in her mind: Selena Montgomery, a friend from college who had since moved to Chicago. Though their contact had been minimal in recent years, Aurora recalled Selena's kind heart and her vow that no friend should ever be left without help. With that sliver of hope, Aurora gathered her courage and headed to the Port Authority bus terminal the next morning. She approached the ticket window, voice wavering, only to learn she needed more than $100 to board a bus to Chicago. Having been cast out without financial support, Aurora found herself in the humiliating position of begging strangers for assistance. Her initial efforts were met with polite refusals or hurried excuses. She felt eyes slide away from her as if her desperation made her invisible. Just as her spirit threatened to shatter, a lanky, kind-faced man tapped her on the shoulder. He quietly handed her the exact amount she needed, explaining that he had once been in a similarly desperate situation. He offered no sermon, only a faint smile and a parting wish that she pay it forward someday. With gratitude burning in her chest, Aurora boarded a bus bound for Chicago. Every mile that placed Manhattan behind her felt like a step toward salvation, or at least the unknown, which was preferable to living a half-life of scorn and insult under Donovan's watchful eye. Upon reaching Chicago, Aurora's heart pounded with renewed anxiety. She had only Selena's address from an old letter and didn't know if her friend still lived there. She arrived by cab at a modest apartment building in Lincoln Park, each step to the door echoing 100 fears in her mind. When the door finally opened, Selena's wide, surprised gaze softened into empathy. Aurora tried to speak, but only managed to utter a tearful explanation of how she had nowhere else to go. Selena, without hesitation, took Aurora in, gave her a place to rest, and offered her comfort that she had not felt since those first years of her marriage. That evening, in the warm glow of Selena's living room, Aurora allowed her tears to flow freely. She recounted Donovan's betrayal in shaky detail. Selena listened with mounting anger and heartbreak. Yet when Aurora finally went quiet, Selena assured her that this was not the end. She would help Aurora find her footing in Chicago and, most importantly, help her protect the child she carried. In that moment of shared sisterhood, Aurora felt hope sparking anew. Life in Chicago proved daunting at first. Selena lived in a cramped but cozy two-bedroom apartment that smelled of brewed coffee and citrusy cleaning supplies. The modest living conditions were a stark contrast to the marble floors and panoramic views Aurora had grown accustomed to in Donovan's penthouse. Yet despite the downgrade in luxury, Aurora felt an unexpected wave of relief. Here she was free from judgmental glares or whispered gossip. She had the genuine warmth of a friend who believed in her, and importantly, she had space to plan a future for her unborn child. With Selena's unwavering support, Aurora began job hunting in the city. Each morning she rose early, determined to do whatever it took. She printed a stack of resumes and slipped them into a scuffed folder. The rejections came fast. Most employers wanted someone with experience in Chicago or a reference from a local business, and Aurora had neither. Still, her determination refused to waver. The desire to provide for her child fueled her steps. She pressed on, entering cafes, diners, and shops, handing out her resume wherever she could. Eventually, her persistence paid off at a small, unpretentious diner in River North. The owner, a stern but fair woman named Margaret, took one look at Aurora's earnest expression and decided to give her a shot. The job was demanding, cleaning tables, taking orders, and replenishing coffee at a relentless pace. By the end of each shift, Aurora's feet ached and her back throbbed. But this honest work gave her something Donovan's penthouse never had, a sense of self-worth. Instead of relying on her husband's checkbook, she now relied on her own determination. Over time, Aurora and Selena began exploring Chicago's community resources. Selena, who worked as an elementary school teacher, introduced Aurora to various programs designed to help single mothers. After hours spent filling out forms and meeting with counselors, Aurora enrolled in an evening certification course for medical office administration. She took her classes in the evenings after finishing her diner shifts, fueled by pure resolve and a desire to carve out a stable future. It was a grueling schedule, but every sacrifice felt like an investment in the child she would soon cradle in her arms. Months passed in a blur of long days and late nights. Aurora's belly grew along with her sense of purpose. She saved every extra penny, sometimes skipping meals just to stretch her funds. Margaret noticed Aurora's unwavering work ethic and extended small acts of kindness. A free meal here, a flexible shift there. Selena was Aurora's anchor, babysitting textbooks so Aurora could study, or massaging Aurora's tired feet after a day that started at 5 in the morning and ended close to midnight. When the seasons shifted from a brutal Chicago winter to a milder spring, Aurora finally completed her certification. She applied for entry-level positions at medical clinics across the city. Eventually, she landed an offer at a pediatric practice near Lincoln Park, a modest but bustling office. As she left her last shift at the diner, Margaret wished her luck, reminding Aurora of how far she had come since those desperate first days. With tears in her eyes, Aurora thanked her for the chance that had started it all. She was no longer the frightened woman who had arrived in Chicago with nothing. She was now an expectant mother, ready to greet her future on her own terms. The day Aurora's son was born at Northwestern Memorial Hospital felt like a defining moment, not just in her life, but in a saga that had begun the night Donovan kicked her out of his penthouse. Aurora named her child Adrian. From the instant she cradled him in her arms, tiny fingers clinging to hers, she experienced a love so profound that it eclipsed all her past fears. He had wisps of dark hair and eyes that took on a curious brightness. In that hospital bed, with Selena by her side, Aurora promised her newborn that she would always protect him and never allow the cruelty of another person's choices to overshadow his potential. The early years of single motherhood tested Aurora's limits. She juggled her new position at the pediatric clinic and the demanding responsibilities that came with caring for a newborn. She would wake up at dawn to feed Adrian, dress him, and prepare for work. Selena, true to her word, helped whenever she could, but Aurora made every effort not to overburden her friend. After all, Selena was doing so much already, housing Aurora for a reduced rent and providing emotional support that was priceless. Each day, Aurora marveled at Adrian's growth, from his first smiles to his first wobbly steps. The exhaustion of double shifts and sleepless nights melted away whenever Adrian recognized her face and stretched out his tiny arms for comfort. Money remained tight, so Aurora learned to budget meticulously. She scoured thrift stores for baby clothes and bought discounted groceries from local markets. Every saved dollar went into a small fund for Adrian's future. The more she strived for stability, the more she realized she needed a permanent home for herself and her son. 6 months after Adrian's birth, Aurora found a modest apartment not far from Selena's. It had peeling wallpaper and creaky floorboards, but it was clean, safe, and hers. The sense of independence was a revelation. She was building a life purely out of her own grit in a network of goodwill. Meanwhile, halfway across the country in New York City, Donovan Hawthorne's life continued unimpeded by the child he had forsaken. His real estate empire grew, and though he went through a couple of short-lived relationships, none stuck around long enough to break the ice around his heart. In tabloids, he was often photographed at lavish galas or charity functions, always in a designer suit, always with a practiced smile. Rumors abounded about his cutthroat business practices, but they never seemed to damage his reputation among the wealthy circles he frequented. Through it all, Aurora was not even a memory, at least not one that Donovan cared to resurrect. Yet Aurora refused to let bitterness dominate her life. At night, when she tucked Adrian into bed, she would sometimes think of Donovan. She questioned how a man could sever himself so completely from the life of his own son. But with each question came a resolve not to dwell on the past. Anger would not feed or clothe Adrian. Love would. And that is what Aurora aimed to provide. Unwavering, abundant love. She taught Adrian kindness, resilience, and the importance of working for what you believe in. When he was old enough to ask about his father, Aurora answered with calm honesty. He was a man who chose a different path, a path that did not include them. Years passed in a steady rhythm. Aurora, now an experienced medical office administrator, moved to a better apartment in a friendlier neighborhood, one with a small communal garden where Adrian could play. The pediatric clinic where she worked treated her like family, and she soon gained a reputation for being both empathetic and efficient. Through all the milestones, Adrian's first words, his early fascination with books, and his school achievements, Aurora never once regretted leaving Donovan's shadowy world behind. Occasionally, the memory of that painful night resurfaced, but it served only as a reminder of how far she and Adrian had come. Adrian grew into a bright, considerate child, inquisitive about everything from dinosaurs to the night sky. He had Aurora's warm smile but carried Donovan's striking green eyes, a trait that sometimes made Aurora's heart clench, recalling the man whose DNA Adrian carried, but whose presence was entirely absent. Still, she never let those pangs of memory taint Adrian's happiness. She encouraged his curiosity, saving any spare money for small trips to museums or science fairs, nurturing his budding interests. Under Aurora's watchful guidance, Adrian blossomed. He found joy in reading, built small robots from do-it-yourself kits, and dreamed of attending a prestigious university one day. When Adrian reached his teenage years, he began asking cautious but thoughtful questions about his father. Aurora, true to the promise she had made to herself, refrained from painting Donovan as a villain, even if that was exactly how she had experienced him. He wasn't ready to be a father, she would say softly, and sometimes people make choices they can't take back. Adrian, perhaps sensing her guarded tone, rarely pushed further. He respected that there was pain surrounding the topic, but the curiosity never fully disappeared from his mind. Meanwhile, Donovan Hawthorne's success story became a sort of legend in business media. Articles praised his uncanny knack for anticipating market trends, for buying and selling properties at precisely the right times, and for expanding his portfolio into international ventures. Pictures of him would occasionally flash across news segments Aurora caught on TV, always well-dressed, always confident. If Donovan had any hidden regrets about the son he left behind, it rarely showed in public. Yet behind his carefully curated image, Donovan went through a series of failed marriages and had a strained relationship with the children from those relationships. Private rumors spoke of his temper, of board meetings where he cut down anyone who contradicted him, of lonely nights in a vast penthouse full of expensive art, and no genuine companionship. Adrian turned 18 amid this contrast of two different worlds. Encouraged by his teachers and brimming with ambition, he applied to several top universities around the country. To Aurora's immense pride and relief, he was accepted into a prestigious program at a Manhattan-based institution, Columbia University. The idea of leaving Chicago, the only home Adrian had truly known, was daunting. For Aurora, it meant being separated from her son for the first time. But deep down, she acknowledged that Adrian's dreams were bigger than Chicago, and if going to New York opened doors for him, she wouldn't stand in his way. Adrian, for his part, was excited, but carried an undercurrent of unresolved longing. He knew his father was in New York. Though he promised Aurora he wouldn't chase after Donovan, he couldn't deny the stirrings of curiosity that came with returning to the city of his birth. When Adrian arrived in New York to begin his studies, he was both exhilarated and overwhelmed. Columbia University's campus was vibrant with students hurrying between lectures, exchanging ideas that spanned science, literature, politics, and art. Adrian threw himself into academics, rooming with two other freshmen who quickly became friends. They roamed the city on weekends, wide-eyed at the museums and the bright lights of Times Square. Yet beneath Adrian's sense of wonder lay a quiet tension. He knew Donovan Hawthorne lived somewhere in this city, his name emblazoned on skyscrapers and in the business pages. Adrian remembered glimpsing the man in newspapers or online articles, looking every inch the polished tycoon he was rumored to be. It happened almost by accident one afternoon. Adrian spotted a towering glass structure marked Hawthorne Real Estate Holdings during a walk through the financial district. The name was impossible to miss, shining in sleek metal letters that mirrored the sun. Adrian found himself staring at that nameplate far longer than he intended. This, after all, was the empire built by the father who had walked away. Torn between anger and curiosity, Adrian felt an almost magnetic pull. He needed to understand how someone could dismiss their own child, yet flourish in the public eye. His rational mind warned him that forging a relationship with Donovan might be fruitless, even damaging. But the yearning for answers, some acknowledgement of his existence, was stronger. That evening, he called Aurora. He had kept his promise to check in regularly, but he had not revealed how thoroughly Donovan occupied his thoughts since setting foot in New York. "How are classes?" Aurora asked, her tone as warm and steady as ever. Adrian gave the usual updates: his biology lectures, the new friends he'd made, the local pizza joint he discovered. Something in his voice must have changed, or perhaps a mother's intuition sensed his restlessness. "Is everything all right?" she pressed gently. Adrian paused, deciding whether to unburden himself about seeing the building that bore his father's name. He chose to keep it to himself, not wishing to stir up old pain. Instead, he told Aurora that he missed her and made promises to come home for the holidays. Aurora, though sounding a bit uncertain, wished him well and reminded him that she was always a phone call away. Days turned into weeks. Adrian's internal struggle intensified. He would pass by Hawthorne Real Estate Holdings occasionally, always feeling that tightening in his chest. The question echoed in his mind. Did Donovan ever think about Aurora or Adrian himself? Did he even remember that somewhere out there was a son he had never met? Or was it all just a distant, buried mistake? Fueled by an impulsive desire for closure, Adrian made a bold decision. He dressed in his neatest shirt, combed his hair carefully, and took the subway down to the financial district. Standing in the vast lobby of the Hawthorne building, bustling with well-dressed professionals, Adrian felt small, yet determined. Approaching the reception desk, he swallowed hard and informed the puzzled receptionist he wanted to see Donovan Hawthorne. When asked for his name and appointment details, he spoke with a firm voice. "I'm Adrian Carter. I'm his son." It was the first time he had uttered those words in public, and the gravity of them shook him to his core. The tension in the elevator was palpable as Adrian stood next to a stern-faced security officer. The ride felt interminable, the hush broken only by the hum of machinery and the faint ding announcing each passing floor. Finally, the doors opened onto an opulent executive suite, polished floors gleaming beneath the overhead lights. A vast window spanned the far wall, overlooking the Manhattan skyline. And there, seated behind a sleek mahogany desk, was Donovan Hawthorne. Adrian felt an unexpected tightness in his throat upon seeing his father in person for the first time. Donovan's hair had a dusting of gray, and faint creases showed at the corners of his eyes, evidence of stress or simply the march of time. He looked up from his laptop with a measured coolness, a carefully studied mask that gave nothing away. "Yes?" Donovan's voice was steady, neither harsh nor welcoming. "Who are you?" Adrian's heart pounded, but he forced himself to speak. "My name is Adrian Carter," he said evenly, his voice echoing through the sleek office. "I'm your son." A brief flicker passed across Donovan's face, surprise maybe, or disbelief. But just as quickly, his expression returned to a stoic calm. With a cool, detached tone, Donovan replied, "I don't have a son." Emotions surged within Adrian, but anger buoyed him, giving him the strength to meet Donovan's gaze. In that moment, years of pent-up frustration found voice. "You left my mother when she was pregnant with me," he said, keeping his words clipped to maintain composure. "You threw her out with nothing. We've struggled for years, all the while you've lived in luxury. Maybe you tried to forget me, but I'm real, and I'm standing right here." Donovan stood up, his height imposing. Faint lines of tension appeared around his mouth. The quiet in the office turned suffocating. Finally, Donovan exhaled. "Aurora," he murmured, the name resonating in the hush. For a moment, Adrian thought he saw regret in his father's eyes, but it was gone just as swiftly, replaced by a colder veneer. "She never reached out, never asked for anything." Adrian let out a short, bitter laugh. "Why would she? You made it clear you wanted nothing to do with her, or with me." Donovan's gaze swept over Adrian, assessing and critical, as if trying to read the truth in the young man's eyes. "And what is it you want now?" Donovan asked, his voice as stiff as starched linen. "Money, recognition?" Adrian shook his head, hands clenched at his sides. "I didn't come here for your checkbook. I just wanted to see who you are, who you really are, because all I know of you is a man who chose wealth and power over his own family." For a moment, the two stood there, father and son, separated by more than just the expanse of a sleek desk. The tension was thick enough to stifle breath. Then Donovan broke eye contact, turning toward the panoramic view outside. His reflection ghosted on the glass, like a distant apparition. "I was young," he muttered, his words muted. "I thought I was doing what was best. For me. And I won't pretend I've lost sleep over it." The hollow ring of those words struck Adrian like a blow. It was as though Donovan was admitting the cruelty outright, offering no apology, no explanation. Adrian's chest felt tight, torn between sorrow and outrage. This was the father he had come so far to find, a man who cared more about forging a real estate empire than acknowledging his own blood. Finally, Adrian spun on his heel, heading for the door. He paused at the threshold, speaking quietly without looking back. "I don't need anything from you, and after meeting you, I see I never did." Adrian left Hawthorne Real Estate Holdings with a storm swirling in his mind. He wandered the streets of Manhattan for hours, missing classes and ignoring the incessant ringing of his phone. The confrontation had answered one question. Donovan Hawthorne was precisely the man Aurora had described: cold, calculating, incapable of genuine remorse. Yet another question itched at Adrian. Why did he still feel so unsettled, so hollow? He had seen the man who had shaped his life through absence, and instead of a dramatic confession or heartfelt reconciliation, he had found a person who scarcely blinked at the mention of fatherhood. When Adrian finally mustered the will to glance at his phone, he found multiple missed calls and texts from Aurora. Though he had told her he might run into Donovan one day, she must have sensed his emotional turmoil from the silence. Gathering himself, Adrian called home. The moment Aurora answered, he could hear the concern in her voice. "Adrian, is everything okay?" He almost broke down right then. Yet he contained the tears that threatened to overwhelm him. In a shaky voice, Adrian recounted everything. The stony reception, the complete lack of regret, the feeling of emptiness that had followed him out of Donovan's office. There was a long pause as Aurora absorbed his words. Then, her voice carried a gentle compassion that only a mother could provide. She explained that for years, she had wondered if Donovan cared at all, if he ever let regret creep into his life. But every sign from his indifference to his success confirmed that he had chosen a path that demanded he bury any sentiment or regret. She reminded Adrian that this indifference had no bearing on his worth. From the day he was born, she had treasured him with a love so fierce that it overshadowed any absence. She begged him not to let Donovan's coldness define his identity or path in life. "Closure doesn't come from a man like Donovan," she told him softly. "It comes from within yourself, from realizing you never needed him to be a good person." In that moment, Adrian felt a weight begin to lift from his shoulders, though not entirely. He said goodbye, promising his mother he'd be fine, and ended the call with a renewed sense of where he stood. Over the next few months, he threw himself into studies, forging new friendships and diving deep into clubs that ignited his passion for technology and finance. He excelled academically, gaining the respect of his professors and peers. And though the meeting with Donovan still left a lingering bruise on his heart, Adrian carried on, finding solace in the knowledge that he had never been alone in his struggle. Aurora had always been there, as had Selena, and even Margaret, the diner owner from his mother's past. Strangely enough, fate had further twists in store. Late one night, after a study session for a finance midterm, Adrian received a private message on his phone from an unknown number. The terse text read, "I need to see you. Urgent. Donovan." Adrian's breath caught. He stared at those words, half expecting them to vanish. Why on earth would Donovan want to see him again, and why label it urgent? Confusion warred with curiosity, but a part of him was repelled by the idea of stepping foot in that glass tower once more. Yet a peculiar tug of conscience made him reply. If there was the slightest chance Donovan might be reaching out to correct the wrongs of the past, or if there was some dire circumstance, Adrian wasn't the type to ignore it. He remembered Aurora's steadfast kindness, how she had never allowed bitterness to crush her compassion. Maybe, just maybe, he could be better than the resentment that gnawed at him. After all, meeting Donovan once had been like walking into a sealed vault of old wounds. Could a second meeting reveal something different? With a sense of apprehension, Adrian typed back, "Tell me where and when." Now that you've glimpsed the tension building between our separated lovers, get ready for the final showdown that will truly redefine their lives. Imagine facing the person who discarded you and revealing that their own child has grown stronger without them. This is exactly where our story is headed, leading to a moment where pride and resentment clash under the weight of past decisions. Stay tuned to see how every loose end ties together and what shocking revelation finally forces our millionaire to face the consequences of his long-buried choices. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel to support us, ensuring you'll be the first to hear more enthralling stories just like this. Share your personal opinions in the comments and let us know where you're listening from. Your voice matters to us. Brace yourselves because the best part of this journey is just around the corner.